here's where you are right now. You don't have a muscle up. Let's assess where you are on like upper body pulling strength. Let's see if there's anything that structurally is going to limit you, if there's any pain with certain movements, and here's how long it's typically going to take. And here are the people in our gym who are where you want to go, and here's how long they have been here.
Right.
And here's the process. And we say this all the time to people, is say, the people who look the best in here, because that's a major driver for most people, they want to look good. The people who look the best and the people who are performing the best and the people who are potentially on regionals teams or advancing to masters qualifiers, winning local stuff, or anything like that, they're the ones who've been here the longest and have not taken long breaks. So it just takes patience and consistency.
I am an everyday athlete.
I am an everyday athlete.
I am an everyday athlete.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jarrett Baskin with Mark McCann. You're listening to Everyday Athlete, a podcast devoted to bringing you the amazing stories behind the lives of day-to-day CrossFit athletes like yourself. And I feel like we need to officially change that intro, because we've been talking to non kind of everyday athletes.
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress.
I'm pretty everyday.
Yeah.
At this stage.
It's all right. Well,
yeah.
Today we have Stephen Flamm. We are actually at his facility, Cincinnati Strength. So
thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us
Yeah.
over here. Appreciate it. And this is the second week in a row we've had two amazing beards back to back. So last week we had Dupree, which was one of your athletes, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was here for a few years.
Yeah. And so today we are actually at the facility, which is pretty exciting stuff. I've been here a couple times, and Mark as well. So it's always good to get out and enjoy the scenery, so to speak. So. And really what I want to do is really just talk about your story, where you've been, where you came from, how you got there, and really just dive in a little bit, because one of the things Mark and I was talking about on the way up here was how your training is just a little bit different than I think what most people think of when they think of CrossFit.
Yeah, maybe.
And kind of where that kind of came from. So where exactly did you get your start with maybe just fitness in general?
I've always been interested in being in the gym and the training aspect of it, more so than even competing at any level. So even in grade school through high school, I played baseball for a while, but I was more interested in the actual training process of that than I was in actually playing baseball. So always just enjoyed being in the gym for whatever reason. I just like the process of it, and that had always been the case. So intramural stuff through college, and always was in the gym though, regardless of what those little extracurricular pursuits were. And getting out of undergrad, had a business degree and went to Xavier for grad school for education and English. Kind of thought I wanted to do that, teach in high school, but it was always in the gym, and had a break in between graduating and then potentially getting hired, and had always been doing this CrossFit type stuff. So even back in it must have been 2006, 2007, kind of found that website and just kind of sat around and looked at it, checked in on it every day, and there's no way I'm going to be doing this, or there's no way I'm going to do that. And then eventually, something pops up where you're like, yeah, I can do that. Test it out, and you get absolutely crushed with it.
Do you have one of those workouts that you remember that was like, wow?
Yeah. It was Linda, the three bars of death, which should be an indication.
Appropriately named.
Yeah, right. Which should be an indication. But I'd been in the gym, so I knew how to deadlift, or thought I did. I obviously knew how to bench, because we all benched. And then I was like, all right, cleans, I can kind of figure that out. But that's a whole lot more approachable than some of the stuff that would come up on the main site. So did that as the first workout, and I think it took, it was at least 45 minutes. Yeah. And there were several breaks in there to strip plates off all of the bars, and got done with it. And I remember people coming over like, "Are you okay, man?" I feel great.
Where'd you do that at?
It was at an Urban Active.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was Urban Active in Hyde Park,
Yeah,
and it had to have been 2007.
That
Yeah.
is too funny. That's actually where Mark and I met for the very first
Really?
time.
2010.
Yeah.
I just went in there and lifted heavy weights because that's what we do.
Yeah.
And Jarrett was over there.
There's some
he
guy-
was really good at double unders. I will say that.
He's
There's
always
a-
been, yeah.
There's a guy there that had like a rope hanging off one of the things. So
Yeah.
he did a rope climb workout, and I remember just doing the same exact. I had a buddy who introduced me to it, and same thing, looking at it, and I'm like, and you definitely cherry pick because it would be like, because that's how the .com programming, it'd be like, push jerks 3 3 3 3 3, and I'm like, well, that's stupid. I'm not doing that.
That's not a workout.
You wait for a long Metcon to pop up. And
That's not going to get my calves at all.
That's
Right.
right. I remember doing Helen's distinctively at Urban Active and running 400 meters on the treadmill upstairs, running downstairs to do kettlebell swings
With a dumbbell. Yep.
and then doing pull-ups on a TRX
On a
machine.
TRX, I did the exact same thing. And it took like 20 minutes.
Like, I'm
Oh,
so
yeah.
good at this.
Yeah. And you're like checking the film room with the treadmills to see what movie's playing.
Yeah.
You're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
all
I
right.
forgot about that. There's
Yeah.
not even a
Face
gym
Off
there,
is on.
right?
I can do that.
Oh hell yeah,
Yeah.
face off.
There's not even a gym there anymore, right?
No, it's not a gym. It's just empty.
Empty.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Move on in, Steven.
Yeah, I think the rent is a bit of a bump from,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
here.
Right.
So that's awesome. And so you got your start kind of just at a traditional gym. Where did you make this leap of I'm going to kind of maybe do this, maybe as my full-time fitness regimen?
Yeah, so I mean, it was that day actually when I did Linda, and I was laying there and went home. I was like, "This is awesome! Like I haven't felt like that ever.
Yeah.
There's got to be something to this, or it's, I mean, at the very least, strangely pleasurable."
Yeah.
And the next day that came up was another one that probably should not have done. It had roughly 150. I don't remember the exact structure, but it had about 150 L pull-ups and glute ham sit-ups.
Oh yeah.
So it was like a combo of
Ouch.
two things that, no beginner should ever really touch. And that one was another one that probably took an hour that should have taken 15 minutes, but got through it, and, kind of similar thing. And I just kept going from there. Even with the ones, a week later that, a month prior, I never would have done, just because I'm like, oh, this is dumb. This is kind of a waste of time. But, after you do all those L pull-ups and you do Linda, then all of a sudden push jerk 3 3 3 3 3 doesn't
Yeah.
really sound that bad, because you're okay with only being there for 20 minutes
Yeah,
and then going
exactly.
home. So I started doing that, and other people there, I'd be like, oh, what's this kid doing? And brought in rings. I was friends with some of the trainers there and some of the actual managers there, so they'd let me hang rings from the balcony where all the other people are doing their
Yeah.
Ellipticals.
They're doing their elliptical, which I was still doing at the time afterwards, because push jerk 3 3 3 3 3
That's
wasn't
not a workout.
It wasn't enough. So I'll go do the elliptical for a half hour, or whatever the case is. But would hang the rings there, and then kind of slowly some other people started, hopping in. And it was mostly the trainers at the time, and one of them kind of in a similar situation to me after I graduated. Wasn't in a situation to start a job right away, and we had a little extra cash laying around, and it was one of those deals where it's like, I don't really know what I want to do, but I'm not going to be doing anything to actually make a living for at least 9 months before I could potentially get hired to teach. Do you want to open a little gym? Worst case scenario, we buy some equipment, and everything goes horribly wrong, and we have a little bit of equipment to take home, and we each have a nice garage gym, and then
Yeah.
we go on with our lives. But that was in 2008, and at the time, I think it was just Reiner. Reiner was the only one in
Yep.
the city who had an affiliate.
CrossFit Cincinnati.
Yeah, CrossFit Cincinnati, and they just moved up to Blue Ash. But yeah,
I
they're-
heard that, yeah.
Yeah, so they've been over in Pleasant Ridge, a few 5 miles away from us here. But it just never. We didn't know what we were doing, but we didn't have to at the time because there wasn't anyone else who knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Right. So
that was the
First to
general
market, yeah.
general
Right.
consensus with pretty much everything back then, and what we try and strive to tell our people now, which is like, we made all of the mistakes.
oh yeah,
Please listen to us so you don't have to.
right.
And every now and then you get the people who really will take heed and listen, and but you do have you see them less and less. You're really hard-headed people that completely blow off everything you're saying.
Right.
But so you open a small gym, and how do you get? Because has it always been here?
No, we were about a mile away from here, and it was the worst imaginable location to attempt to run a business out of. It was the first commercial space on a otherwise residential street that had some questionable neighbors. So we'd be running like 400s, and you got to like watch. You get contact buzz from some of the
There
houses
you
that you're
go.
running by, and you got to like watch out for, is that a needle? I don't know,
Right,
but
yeah.
I'm going to avoid it anyway.
And
So
you're also talking about even just a mile away, not now this whole area is pretty up and developed, and that was not the case back then either.
yeah, it wasn't, and that was still like, it's still a semi-questionable street in the area.
Yeah.
But the rent was $600 a month, and it was month to month. So, you know, for two people who had no clue what they were doing and weren't even sure if they were going to be around in 3 months, it was an ideal setup for
Perfect.
us. Yeah, but I mean, this place isn't greatly insulated. You know, we can see in between the cracks in the wall and look outside, but that place was, you had to like, I mean, it was probably dangerous.
Sure.
You know, using the restroom was not a pleasant thing, particularly in the winter, because you could basically see outside. And, you know, I don't know, I never saw in, but you could definitely see out. So there was always, all right, I got to get in and get out.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting start. But again, nobody else was doing that type of stuff. And,
Yeah, that's what,
you know,
08?
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Reiner's
Yeah,
gym was in a traditional like bodybuilding style gym.
And he had that
Right.
little tiny spot.
Yep.
What was his name of his like gym?
DOS Gym.
Josh Gym.
Docs
Yeah.
Gym, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually looked up that gym and I wanted to, because before I found CrossFit, I was all about squat, deadlift, bench. And I'm like, oh, that looks like a hardcore gym. And I think I might have seen that they did CrossFit, but I didn't know what it was at the time.
I remember the very first year of the Open, and we went because we like went from gym to gym, and did one of the, you know, what was it, 11 or was it 10? It was 2010 or 2011.
No, they didn't do the Open 10. It was 11.
2011, and I remember going, and it was just this little like 6-horse stall mats
Right.
in the middle of a room, and then like a 4-person pull-up rig, and like
I think
that
I
was
even
the
got
CrossFit area.
I think I got stepped on doing push-ups there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
Yeah.
sorry, man, I'm trying to work out.
But again, that's how it was
That's what it was.
Yeah.
back then. So where do you make this leap from I'm going to take time off from being a teacher till I get a job to like, well, this is definitely something I'm going to pursue?
Yeah, it was organic. When we opened, we had no idea like what was going to happen. You know, we started with a couple of friends and clients of the guy who I opened the business with originally, Brent. He moved down to Georgia a couple years later and opened his own gym, which is doing pretty well. So you know, we had a couple of his clients because he was a trainer at Urban Active. And then like, you know, when we got contacted by the first person who we didn't know, it was like, holy shit, like,
Yeah.
all right, sure, you can come in. I guess we have to charge you. That's kind of a weird thing for us.
And you
Right.
whisper to somebody and say, what do we charge them?
Yeah, right. Well, how do we do this? Are they really? And then they don't bat an eye when you tell them what you're going to charge. And you're like, all right, well, this is interesting. And then so it just kind of grew from there. A year down the road, we had, you know, we were doing well and paying for everything, paying ourselves a little bit. So like even like right out of the gate, relatively quickly into the process, we were somewhat successful enough to continue doing it, to the point where then it became successful enough for me to say, all right, well, this is a legit job. I can, you know, make a living doing this, and then eventually growing it into something that's a career and, you know, long-term solution for income.
Sure.
Which again, I'd always just loved being in the gym too. So, you know, it was kind of the best of,
Why not,
of everything, right? If I can make a living off of it, if
Right.
it's involved, you know, all the stuff that I'm interested in and playing around with outside of the gym, you know, reading about training, all that stuff, so I can implement that and get paid for it. This is great.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had the teaching degree, so, I mean, it is teaching. So it was kind of a combination of everything that I'd, you know, done in college, but not ever really applied.
Where do you, that's super
That's
interesting.
awesome.
That's an interesting point. So what are the types of things that you can carry over from like taking a teaching degree and putting it into sports? Because I think just from you saying it, the way I could see it going is a lot of like, I can probably communicate in a way that a lot of people don't have that same skill. Is that something they would actually teach you to go through? Or is that just like, this is how you teach someone, that's it?
Well, that would be going down a whole other rabbit hole that may not be, you know, pertinent to anything gym related, but, you know, the teaching programs, even at Xavier, which was supposedly a great program, I just don't think prepares teachers to teach. You're in a classroom, but not teaching.
Sure.
For the majority of the time, and you get, you know, you have one semester of student teaching, and then you have a couple like practicals where you're in you're following somebody for anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. In starting in that classroom as a true teacher, I don't think anyone's really prepared. But I think the same qualities that would make somebody a decent coach also are the same qualities that would make somebody a decent teacher. So if you have those, you probably be okay in either one of those professions. It's just a matter of who you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and whether or not you can retain the interest of those people, whether they're students or clients. It's the same thing to me.
What kind of things do you look for in a coach? Whether just hiring or just someone you come across, you're like, wow, that girl's got it together.
Yeah, personality more than anything, and being able to relate and interact with different other personalities.
Yeah.
Right. So there's tons of people who have technical knowledge and can, assess people and look at them lifting or moving and say, all right, well, that person's great at, these movement patterns, and they're a good athlete, or they're not a good athlete, or they need to work on this or that. But then communicating that to that person, some people are terrible at it and other people are good at it, right? And there's the full spectrum of it. So
Sure.
You have to have a little bit of all of those things. There has to be some technical knowledge, but it has to be combined with knowing how to relate that and communicate that to the client.
I think that's, sorry to jump in. I think that's also what makes a good teacher, to your point. There's a lot of great teachers out there that probably know a lot of information about their individual subject. But I think when you look at the elite trainers or teachers, whatever you want to say, they can put it in the most simplistic form, but also relate it to each student, or in our field, client.
Yeah, I'd agree. And if you're talking about coaching as far as traditional like CrossFit classes, yeah, you have to be able to command a group of people and keep them on task and make every individual feel like they're getting some personal attention within a group setting, which isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do. Particularly, I'm sure you guys, anybody who's done this for long enough knows that there are, sometimes you get through a class and you're like, oh, I don't know if I really connected with everybody or made improvements in each individual that day. But that's what you have to try to do, I think, to be a good coach. And as long as you can present the information of what the training is that day, how it's supposed to be carried out, and make somebody think that they have some sort of improvement that day, right? And not just tricking them into thinking that they made some improvement, but giving them a piece of information that maybe they can take and retain and improve their movement, or get a little bit more out of that 60 minutes if that's what your class structure is.
And I think there's two things that you mentioned there that definitely ring true with what we see a lot is A, relatable. So you have to be relatable to every type of person, every fitness level, every walk of life that comes to your door. And B, you always have to be expanding your knowledge, because if you have a person who's been here for 5 years, you can't tell them knees out for 5 years.
Right.
You have to either A, learn a new way to explain it, or B, expand your knowledge to give them some more information.
Right.
And then the other part of that is being relatable and being empathetic. Just because you can do 50 wall balls unbroken does not mean that person can do 50 wall balls unbroken. You have to be able to bring yourself down to their level and say, I've been there. Mark and I try and do it pretty much with everyone that walks through the door. It's because we all did that Linda workout, or Nancy,
whatever your workout
I
is.
remember
You've been humbled by
I remember doing
CrossFit.
Nancy at CrossFit Northern Kentucky, and my right arm going numb.
Yep.
I'm just well, I don't know why that's
Man,
doing
everybody's
that, but
arms used to get so numb on overhead squats.
I know.
And maybe we
My
just
wrist.
don't do Nancy anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. What was that, 75 overhead squats?
It's that radial nerve, and you're just
Yeah, I can't remember the last time we had people in a class do 75 overhead squats.
Yeah.
It just hasn't
we've done
happened.
that
But
in a
it
while.
used to be 50% of people used to get jacked up wrists, or their entire arms would go numb for a day.
Right. So it's and being able to be hey, I've been there, and this is again what we talked about early on in the podcast, which was listen to my dumb mistakes, so you don't have a numb arm for 3 days.
Right.
You don't want that. Then A, you can't train. B, it's just bad for all of us. It's no fun for anybody when you're in that state.
And knowing that, going back to Linda, knowing what Linda, after you've done it a few times, knowing what it should feel like.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
Setting
so
that
there was a bunch
expectation.
of So that's what we do, and that's what we look for in our coaches, whether they have that initially or, all of them have come from inside the gym, so they've been training in this environment and this structure of a program for a long time. So, being able to say, hey, this is the intent of today. This should be an 8 to 10 minute piece, and it should feel like this, right? And then you have the experience, you can describe that. and be able to say, all right, so Jared, you're going to use this weight on this because I've seen you work out for 2 years and I know you're good at this portion and need work on this. So to make this an 8 to 10 minute like high breathing effort piece, here's what I would recommend you do. And then it's on you. And then Mark, you might be the opposite. So like
I am.
you're going to need to work on some different things. But the goal for us and the goal for my coach is to be able to say at the end of the day, like, hey, we have 10 different people in here. They all have different skill levels and they're all like at a different point along their like CrossFit path. But they all look the same afterwards.
Yeah.
Right. So like whether you've been a regionals athlete or you're only in here for the second week of your CrossFit life, you know, everyone was laying on the floor afterwards, but then was able to get up, or everybody just walked away from it because that was the intent of that day. So that's what we really look for eventually in our coaches, to be able to say, all right, well, we have 10 different people here. Here's what the intent is. You got to be able to explain that to them so that they know what it should feel like. And people still screw it up all the time, but that's okay. They only screwed up a few times before they realize, like, oh, all right, well, you know, they told me it should have felt like this, and I was obliterated after 2 minutes, and there was still 8 minutes left. So, you know, I need to make an adjustment. So as long as they can reflect on that and then afterwards say, you know, maybe approach that member and say, all right, well, you know, what could you have done to change what that felt like a couple minutes in?
Sure.
Right? And then are you going to remember that next week when we have a similar prescription or not? So being able to do that is what we really look for. Personality, being personable, and then explaining the intent and being able to follow through in that. And if you screw up, you screw up, but at least you can say, all right, well, what can we learn from that? And then let's do this next time.
Right.
I know one of the things that we constantly struggle with, whether it's just in our personal day-to-day life, but a lot of our people that come through the door that want to, you know, conquer the world in a week, the toughest thing we constantly kind of talk about in our coaching meetings, so on and so forth, is teaching patience. I wonder if you can maybe add to that, like as far as just whenever people might walk through your door. Obviously, you have a good pedigree of training athletes, and you're a very intelligent guy in regards to getting people to the next level. Again, any insights into whenever people are coming to you thinking like, hey, I want to go to the CrossFit Games, and they maybe don't even have a muscle up or something like that.
Right. I mean, you said it. It's just you look for patience in people, right?
Sure.
And to be able to explain, you know, here's where you sit right now, here's where you want to get, and here's how long that typically takes.
It's like a self-awareness. Like,
right. And you can't necessarily teach it, but you know, when you've had a gym for as long as you guys have and as long as we've had, and then you have, I mean, you've been on the floor at regionals. You've gone to regionals before on a team, right? Did you ever
I've coached?
Okay,
I qualified 1 year, but
you know what it takes those years to like do it, and so to be able to say, hey, here's where you are right now. You don't have a muscle up. Let's assess where you are on like upper body pulling strength. Let's see if there's anything that structurally is going to limit you, if there's any pain with certain movements, and here's how long it's typically going to take, and here are the people in our gym who are where you want to go, and here's how long they have been here,
right,
and here's the process. And we say this all the time to people, is say, you know, the people who look the best in here, because that's a major driver for most people, they want to look good. The people who look the best and the people who are performing the best and the people who are potentially on regionals teams or advancing to masters qualifiers, winning local stuff, or, you know, anything like that, they're the ones who've been here the longest and have not taken long breaks. So it just takes patience and consistency and showing up and doing that work. And it's easier as a coach to be able to say, hey, look at that person. Chelsea's back there lifting. Look at Chelsea. She's where most females are going to want to get within CrossFit. This is how long she's been here. This is where she started, and here's like the process that it took to get there.
Yeah,
I love that word, the process, and that's again one of the books, The Score Takes Care of Itself by Bill Walsh. It's basically an insight into him taking the 49ers from consecutive years of 2-12 to back-to-back Super Bowl championships, and he attributes that to all of his guys buying in to the process. And that's the
faith in
thing.
your coach, trusting the programming, knowing that when it's light, it's supposed to be light.
Well, it's just like, you know,
right.
Yeah. It's when John Wellborn, you know, did the CrossFit football years ago, and I love one of the things he said was, he's like, I played 9 years in the NFL, and he always would say practice, perfect practice, because in reality, I only played 3.5 hours of game time.
Mm-hmm.
I practiced for 9 years, and look at a sport like CrossFit. It's obvious to us how much training goes into a 10-minute AMRAP or whatever the workout, fill in the blank. Whenever you're at regionals or even the open workouts, that some of them are less than 5 minutes. Like you're trained, anyway.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
all about that process.
Absolutely. You made a segue for myself a little while ago because we had lunch or we were talking at one point and actually brought up the workout Helen, which was I found super intriguing, and exactly kind of what I talked about the very first couple of minutes of the podcast was you have a little bit different training style, and what I mean by that is we think of Helen as 3 rounds, 400-meter run, 21 kettlebell swings at 53 pounds, 35 pounds, and 12 pull-ups. The way that you kind of describe that workout is we're going to do 3 400-meter runs with 21 swings as heavy as you can do. So, and you said, that may be a 70-pound kettlebell. It may be an 88-pound kettlebell, depending on the person.
Sure.
I think that's for a lot of people. Like you said, if people come in their first couple weeks, it's, well, what's the RX?
Right.
Like, well, whatever you can do.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, they think of like modifying down, but you're almost modifying up in a lot of cases as well.
Yeah, so like what we look for, and it goes back to how our coaches describe what the clients are doing that day. We say, all right, it's not Helen necessarily. It's 8 to 12 minutes of high effort aerobic work with a hip extension and an upper body pull. Right? That's
Sure.
that's how that's how I think of it in my head.
Right. Because an upper body pull could be a lot of different things for a lot of different people.
And so could hip extension, right?
Right.
For most people, you're just looking at Helen. 3 rounds, 400-meter run, 21 swings, and 12 pull-ups?
Yep.
But some people might get done with that in, well, not 6 minutes, but you're going to have some people who are going
That'd
to
be very fast. Helen.
Yeah, they're going to be really fast. They're going to get done with it, and if they've been doing this long enough and it's what they're good at, great. They're going to finish really quickly, but could they have also changed the weight a little bit and finished a minute slower but gotten a different workout? Maybe it's better, maybe it's not. Doesn't matter. But what we don't want is somebody who's going to have to break those kettlebell swings 3 or 4 times every set, and their
Just to
runs are
get
going to
through
take
it.
3 minutes, and they're going to be doing singles the entire time on the pull-ups just to be able to say, oh, well, I did Helen.
And check that box.
Right, which is fine sometimes. Like if we're going to test stuff and we want to see where people sit, we can test. But for the average person who's here just for health, what we really want is 8 to 12 minutes of high breathing work that is going to be pretty unpleasant, and they're not going to have to think too much about the weight of the kettlebell to be able to complete that in a certain time frame.
And you guys have it on your website. Mark was reading it off on the way over here, and I found it. I like how it was worded. It's you can do CrossFit for health, and you can do CrossFit for sport.
Yeah.
Those are 2 wildly different things.
Right.
And to have people fundamentally understand the difference between those 2, I think makes you a success, because that's really the hard thing for a lot of people is to differentiate between, like I told someone the other day, like if I never do a pistol again, I'm fine with that. I don't have to do a pistol to be healthy.
Right.
I have to do pistols if I want to compete, but I can do single leg Bulgarian split squats. I can do, there's a million different things I can do. They're not going to make me feel that uncomfortable.
Right.
And put me in a compromising position that a pistol does. Same thing with heavy deadlifts. They wreck me, and
Going back to Nancy, overhead squats
Yeah.
are a huge one. There are a lot of people who just probably shouldn't be overhead squatting.
yeah.
Right.
I think that's where you're seeing a lot of gyms go too, is like
Yeah.
really understanding.
We've
that
been
it's-
having a lot of those epiphanies lately, especially with the the internal rotation of the shoulder, and
Yeah.
we're like, okay, we're going on the front squats.
Just do front squats.
Yeah.
Right.
Like just do a goblet squat, and you're gonna get, like you said, if you do 5 rounds of these high intense, if you push the run, even if it's a 200-meter run, and you come back in and rock out goblet squats, and you're on your back at the end of the day,
Right.
you did the same as what you could do as the person who did Nancy.
Right. And you probably are going to come back the next day and feel pretty good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the big thing.
I had we did a partner workout the other day, and it was 5 rounds, and we were basically cutting people off at 30 minutes, and it was at 28 minutes, and they just finished their 4th round, and they're like, we didn't get through the 5th round. I'm like, did you get a good workout? And then they were covered in sweat, so I knew
Right.
the answer before I asked it, but I was like, is your heart rate up? Did you get a good workout? And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But we didn't get, it's like, did you get a good workout?
Yeah.
You know, like it goes back to that premise that you just brought up on his website about what are you training for? Is it a sport, or is it like, are you trying to get healthy, get in here, move, and meet the stimulus for the day?
And we explain this to people all the time, but it's completely arbitrary what's put on the board to some extent. Not that there's not ever thought put in, programs
Sure.
are laid out and things like that, but it could have very easily been as a workout, 5 rounds of 200-meter run and 15 goblet squats.
Yeah.
Right. So like, there's nothing special about 400-meter run and 15 overhead squats. There's nothing
Right.
special about that.
Yeah.
It's, breathing and running and squatting.
Yep.
Right.
With some overhead stability, but you can get that similar thing in a different way. And if we put up 200-meter run and 15 goblet squats, then that person who potentially feels like they're doing less work because they're not doing overhead squats, they're going to do everything and feel great. So if you can set it up in a way that people are going to feel good regardless of which variation they do, I think that's a win.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. I actually want to brag on you a little bit. Well, I actually want to talk basically, because we had Dupree on yesterday, and he's had some success in CrossFit and things like that, and you've had other athletes as well go to that kind of next level, whether it be regionals or getting to qualifiers and things like that. Why do you think that maybe you've produced those athletes and not that other people haven't, but what makes your training maybe just a little bit different?
There are a lot of things that I think are probably slightly different than what a lot of gyms are doing, but I don't know that for sure because I don't know exactly what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
Right?
What are some of those things you think might be different? Because I've always noticed what you guys do here is a little bit different. I've always admired it, and I've thought
I think one of the first things is there are a lot of people who are capable of writing good programs for either general health or for competition, but a lot of them just don't do it, and they pull comp train or they run Invictus's competition class.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's a bunch of gyms that run comp train as their class
That's
right
like
now in Cincinnati.
That's the latest.
That is the latest, and apparently
Yeah.
there's another one that's popped up too as
Right.
well.
We fell into that bucket for a while. I mean, and again,
Yeah,
when you
and
look
we
at
used to follow. I mean, I used to have
Yeah.
our competitors do Invictus's track years and years ago, or the original OPT blogs we used to do all the time.
Big
And
dogs.
that was our that was our sport track, right?
Can we just real quick? I remember. I
remember the day
Sorry.
Ben Scott.
Yes.
I remember-
It doesn't
going
even
big
matter
dog
how.
trains. Like, oh yeah, you can do it.
It doesn't
Like,
even matter how you finish that sentence, but
Yeah.
I remember one day Ben Scott ... right?
I just remember doing like legitimate CrossFit for 6 months and be like, well, I clearly need more. I'm an
Yeah.
expert now.
Oh
You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
I'm an expert now. I've been doing this for 6 months and I need more.
So
and
you-
then you just dive headfirst into a 2-foot deep pool of
Oh.
just hell.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then you
Ouch.
pretty quickly realize that I have no business doing this right now. And it's like I can just feel my arm again from doing Nancy. It's like, and then you're in the gym doing, how the hell do I do 85% of my ability on at the time
Yeah.
Airdyne bikes?
Right.
And it's like you don't know what 85% is of your
Right.
max, and it's like you're just like, well, I'll just go kind of hard, I guess. And to your point, I think people want to just jump straight to that.
Sure.
And if they want to, that's great. But like you said, that expectation has to be met.
Yeah, and that's
this
like
is where you're at, and this is how you have to. It's going to take this long to get there, and this is what you have to do.
And
a
I
lot of
think
that's very
the
unsexy.
reality though is that's like a step along the way in people's CrossFit career.
Right.
Right. So
Yep.
they'll join an affiliate, they'll get into it, they'll be consistent, they'll see improvement potentially, and this is a small segment of the CrossFit population in general, but they'll say, hey, I want to be competitive with this. I saw what these guys are doing, so I want to follow this. That's part of the process of people developing, or at least it has been up to this point. It's really rare for somebody to come in with no CrossFit background and say, I think I can go to regionals someday. I don't have any training, but can we lay out a 3 to 5 year plan for me to make it where I want to go? Even if that's the smartest thing, you could tell somebody, hey, I want to make a 3 to 5 year plan. Let's get you to regionals in 5 years. If they're not ready for it to hear that, they're going to go to another gym who's running one of those competition blogs, and they're going to get crushed for a couple of months, and maybe they make it out on the other side. If they're resilient enough, maybe they do make it out. But I don't think a lot of them do.
Yeah.
So then, a couple of years in, and back to your point of all right, well, how have we had some success? I think we write the programs in here based upon who is actually in the gym running those programs, right?
Sure.
So like if we have 5 people who are in our sport group, the program is specifically written for an avatar of those 5 people. So we assess them, we test them, we say, all right, as a group, we're weak squatting relative to our pulling. Upper body pressing gymnastic stuff is weak. So we'll lay out, what's actually happening with that group after testing them and say, here's what we're going to do over the next 3 months, year, to progress these people according to what their goal is of being as good as they can be in the open, right? And so you don't get that with a general blog that's written for who? I don't know, 10,000 people following CompTrain? Like,
the same thing
if you take the 3 of us and one program is written for us, it's probably not going to be ideal for any of us. Might be, if you get lucky, maybe it matches up with everything Jarrett needs. And then Mark and I are like, oh, well, this squatting volume is too much for me, and it's probably not enough for you, and so on. So anytime you expand beyond like one person, a program written for one person, you're going to have a drop in how perfect that program is for anyone who's following it. But I'd rather have a program written for 5 people, or I think currently we have like 20 people who are on that like sport track. I'd rather have that than a program written by someone else who doesn't even know who the athletes are. Right. So like at some point in people's CrossFit lives, if they stick it out long enough, they say, yeah, that makes sense. Why am I following Invictus's competition program when it's not written for me? And the coach isn't factoring in anything that I specifically need and isn't there to say, that looks like crap, you need to be doing this, or let's sub this out today because your shoulder hurts. I want someone to guide me in that process of like going from where I am now to getting where I potentially could be. And you don't get that on a templated program online.
Same thing goes for weightlifting too. I mean, just as I'm been writing more and more programs, and it's like it's really hard to have this blanket program when you're talking about, especially in the sport of weightlifting, you're only talking about 2 different things, and there's a lot of different things that can happen with different bodies. And it's like you have to start to be very specific on how you are directing people, or else you're either just lazy or really don't know what you're doing.
And the simplest example is, I guarantee you the amount of squatting work and squatting volume and variation that the 3 of us need are completely different week to week. Like what is going to work for me is not going to work for you. Just knowing what I know about how you're put together and what your numbers are, there's no way we should be on the same program. Because especially if it's percentage based, like I'll get buried on percentage based squatting and just be done for a week and my knees feel terrible, and you might be able to handle that. You might be able to, I'm guessing you would be more comfortable with higher reps at closer to a max, whereas I'm good for like 1 rep, literally 1 squatting rep at 90%
I like
plus.
1.
Yeah, you do too,
one's
right?
my favorite number.
Yeah, exactly. But if he does only 1s at 90% plus, he's probably not going to develop as quickly as you would on that, right? So like unless you know what people are made of, or at least get an indirect idea of what they're made of by actually testing them, you're just throwing darts. Like you just don't know.
That's a good analogy.
So I think, again, to take it back, first of all, I got really lucky. I opened before anyone else did. And I got lucky with who came in, and there were some talented people at the time, so they had success. And then eventually it's like, all right, well, if you're a competitive CrossFitter in the area, where are you going to go? Like, and so you shop around a little bit, and the people who understand what we do, or at least understand enough about what we say that we do and then potentially do, they can compare that to other gyms. And some people are going to say, yeah, I see the value in that. That makes sense to me, so I'm going to go there.
Well, and I think for yourself, you have definitely built a reputation. And again, just bragging on you. I mean, I know Mark and I have talked about it. We have kind of a short list of people that we say admire, kind of like look towards, and you're definitely one of them, just because you have carried yourself in that manner where,
well, that's cool.
Yeah. Because most of the time we're just flying by the seat of our pants anyway. So.
Oh, I mean, I am too.
But
right?
I think the things that we have learned definitely are in line with that. Whereas, like, we have found that we started doing just weekly previews of what the program is going to be, and they're trying to explain that like we're gearing up for Murph right now, so we're gonna have this big event. We're gonna have as many people there as possible, but trying to explain to people that this is what you should be experiencing when you are doing that workout. And we just did half of it on Monday of this week, and explaining that this is exactly how this workout should go. And I had the class that I taught had a couple people where it's like, I just want you to run. You're gonna go run at this time, because
Right.
I don't want you to spend 40 minutes doing 5, 10, 15, 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 15 air squats, and you not get anything out of it. You know, I want you to try and go quickly until this point, and then go run, and then come back and push very hard on that.
And then what you're doing is you're putting that on them,
Yeah.
right? And
Less
I try to
hand-holding.
do that all the time, is say, here's what I can offer, here's my advice, here's what I've prescribed. It's up to you to execute it. And if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, then it's still on them, right? And that's part of that process. You got to learn how to run whatever workouts are coming up, and you got to learn how to pace, and nobody does it.
Absolutely.
I mean, the really good people do it intuitively, but
Yeah.
most people take a long time to figure that out. And you can say, I've done Murph this many times,
Yeah.
and here are my terrible experiences with Murph, and here's some good experiences with Murph, and here's what the good ones, here's what was involved in that. So
Sure.
then you can say, as a coach with a lot of experience, here's how I want you to think about doing this. But again, that puts it on them, and it's up to them to do it.
Yeah. And
So that's huge. Like, you guys have a ton of experience in this sport, so you can say, in my experience,
yeah.
8 years, however long it's been, this is what's worked well.
Absolutely.
And that's easier for a client to listen to than, well, we opened up 6 months ago, right? And I was training at another gym for 6 months, and I loved it, so I opened up my own, right?
Yeah.
Like, so some people will be drawn to that, and other people will be drawn to you guys and us.
And usually then it's like they're drawn to the price.
Yeah, well,
by
yeah,
someone
there's
who's
that
been
too.
open for 6 months. And we'll definitely hear that from time to time. It's like, well, they cost this much. And I think one of the best answers we've always come up with, which is, this is what we have to charge in order to train you properly.
Yeah.
Because the complete opposite end of the spectrum is you can go to Planet Fitness for next to nothing.
And you
know?
can follow that very same comp train.
Yeah, and you can follow
Right.
it exactly.
Yeah.
With
But I think they sounded an alarm at you at some point.
Yeah, at some point.
But the point is, it's exactly that, which is you can get millions of
Do you guys
free
follow?
templates.
You don't follow comp train?
We don't have
Every
any,
day, Steven.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Every
we don't
day.
have any.
Like
I'm
three
going.
3 minutes ago, I had this like sinking feeling, like, oh man, I hope that's
no,
not.
I respect obviously everything
It's a good
that Ben
program.
Bergeron. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
100%. It's a very high level blanket program.
And I
but-
think he saw that a lot of people were following the competitive track and said, this doesn't make any sense, so we're going to create a template and a program for classes. And if you
Yeah.
look at that site, I don't know if you guys have looked at their class stuff, it's really laid out precisely. Like earlier this week, I looked at it, they had Fran, but it wasn't just Fran. It was like from 0 to 10 minutes, here's what we're doing. From 11 minutes to 20, you're working on this. And it's broken down in very specific prep for that workout. Which is amazing, because that's somebody who really knows what they're doing, who's put out a free program that is effective.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
there's no denying that. And he was smart enough to say, well, what we're doing for our regionals athletes is not what should be done for people who are in affiliate classes.
Well, and it's been well known for a while now. You can go down that path, which is, if you're training for regionals, it's different than training for the Open.
right?
It's 100% different. Like that was one thing with, well, again, we went in that kind of, not trap, but we went down that road of like the outlaw way and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, great program, but those guys are training for regionals.
Small
Well-
off squats.
Yeah,
Right.
Ooh.
when you're doing 10 by 3 at 90% every Saturday for 8 weeks, it's like you're either, oh boy,
It's
you
empty.
need to be, your body needs to be ready, or you need to not be doing that program.
Yeah, and again, that's what it comes down to: is this the right program for you?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. For the amount of time you have, for what your lifestyle is. Do you have a family? Do you have a job?
Yeah.
Well, that
How
was
much
one of
time
the-
do you have, and what do you want to get out of it? So like, it's got to match up for a lot of people. That some of those templates are perfect matches for them,
To
or
your
really close
point-
to it. So great, do it.
To
But
your point
for
with
some
comp
people, it's
train,
not.
100%. So when you ask, like, do we follow that? We actually don't have any competition training whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it's not that our people couldn't handle it, but we have a lot of people who have your everyday life stuff. And, and just from personal experience, it created this weird divide. You know, you have to be very careful on how you're doing.
It's not to say we'll never do it.
Yeah. You know, it's just not where we're at.
Oh,
right now.
I don't think it's been the most lucrative path for me as
Yeah.
a business owner to have a sport track and a health track. If it had just been, health for
Yeah.
everybody, I don't know, it probably would have been a lot less headaches over the years.
Yeah.
And probably would have more members right now, but that's okay because I enjoy doing both of them.
Exactly.
So if I didn't have that other side of it, I don't think I'd get as much out of running a gym.
Yeah.
One of the conscious decisions we made whenever we had that conversation was starting a weightlifting club, because people, ultimately, hey, if you want to be a competitor, we believe enough in our general GPP programming. You couple that with weightlifting, and obviously we still provide personal training, one-on-one coaching. We can get you to where you want to go, but you're not going to be put on a pedestal, and you're not going to be allowed to do, heavy grace while we're coaching a class,
Right.
in the middle of the gym. So I think that conversation is had up front with people we've had come through the door, and they just usually don't come back.
Right.
But so I've looked at Comp Train recently as well. I'm currently doing the gym's programming. We kind of trade off, and I just looked at the time commitment.
Yeah.
All these snatch and clean and jerk, and then squat, and then accessory, and then Metcon, and it's just one of those things where I'm like, holy crap! Like, that is just so much volume. Obviously, hopefully they've worked up to that appropriately. But when I look at that, the thought of jumping into that just terrifies me. I'm like, oh, that's gonna leave me not able to walk for.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, he put out that class or the affiliate.
Yeah, I didn't see that
track,
one. I would
and
like
it's-
to look at that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really interesting, and you can spend a lot of time looking at it and saying, yeah, that's a really smart warm up,
And
or a
there's-
really
there's
smart
tons of
method
value
for
in there.
building to
I've,
that.
I've seen even CrossFit.com do more stuff
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
and
their
they're-
Instagram page is pretty cool,
Yeah,
where
it
they'll
is.
run through like how to scale it and different options, and how to warm up for all of it. And look, when I'm saying, hey, we write our own programs in here, that's not to say that I don't rip off everybody else's stuff.
Oh my God.
because
yeah.
it happens
It's a
all the
copycat.
time, right?
Yeah.
I 100% just recently through the USAW sports performance coaching seminar, just totally stole their warm up.
Yeah.
Because it was I got done with it and I was like, this was amazing, and it took 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
You
So
know?
like, nothing's new with any of this stuff. So
Right.
you see something, you're like, all right, well, that actually applies to what we want our people doing.
Yeah.
So great, take it.
Yeah. It's
But
fantastic.
don't blindly take it. You know what I mean? And I'm sure it's one of those things.
Right,
with
without
you're putting a
thinking.
lot of thought into it. And like Jared said, hey, this applies to what we're doing.
Yeah.
But to the original point, like, so many people are just hopping into these programs with no thought beside, I want to be the best. And that person being the best, it might be just, hey man, you just need to improve your air squat.
Right.
And let's start there. Or so on and so forth. But
Yeah, I agree, man.
yeah.
So it's been obviously quite a journey for you. Where do you kind of see? So how long have you been in this actual building?
This building, a little over 6 years.
Okay, so
Actually, it might be 7.
yeah, and it's definitely
Is
changed.
this your 10-year?
This will be our 10-year.
Wow,
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
In
Congratulations.
November.
That's
yeah.
awesome. That's
Yeah,
gonna
it's
be-
pretty cool.
It's exciting. Plus, you got Mad Tree right down
We'll
there.
have you
There's-
guys up. We'll do something. Have
Yeah.
everybody who's ever
Yeah, that'd
been
be
a part
fun.
in any way.
Cool.
We'll invite them to kind of celebrate with
That'd be
us.
pretty
So
fun.
it should
10
be a
years
good-
is a long
Should be a
time.
good year.
Double.
Yeah.
We're only on 5 in October.
Yeah.
But obviously, we're
You were
part of some-
involved longer, right?
Yeah.
jumping around from here to there.
Yep.
So what's for the next 10 years? Where you think you'll be going? Because this place has changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's a great
just
gym.
since I've been around and visited here and there. And like I said, there's been an outdoor rig, and then this guy back here is new. And so what's the next step for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we're on a month-to-month lease here, which is great.
That's easy. That's good.
We're in a great location. I would love to build out from the ground up an actual facility. And that's a longer term thing because it's hard to find some land in this area for any reasonable price. But I think we've gotten here without too much thought put into it, which is just kind of my style. And again, maybe that kind of slowed down progress in some ways, but it's overall been successful. So I don't do a great job at mapping things out and saying, all right, well, here's where I want to be in 3 years. It's more of a day-to-day thing and making sure that I'm enjoying everything. And checking in every once in a while, obviously, as everybody does, and say, like, all right, well, if I put in a little work in this area, is it going to lead to more enjoyment on a day-to-day basis? So then, yes, great, we'll try to implement that stuff. Or no, we won't worry about it.
I think that's a great thing to live by is
Well,
is this
maybe
creating,
it is. We'll see.
It isn't, but there's something to be said about that. I think Mark and I talk about this a lot. We're just in it so much that you're either blinded by certain things that need to change, or like we're so obsessed with making this one thing perfect that, like you said, we're not enjoying this now.
Right.
That has to be a key component, because that's the reason we all started doing this.
Yeah, and if you don't enjoy it, I guarantee it's not going to be successful with your members, because they're not going to have a great experience interacting with you. Going back to like what makes a good coach, well, you have to be personable and enthusiastic, and if you don't want to be there, that neither of those is going to happen.
Yeah, I love that, man.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have it laid out. It's probably smart to lay it out. I would love to have a new facility built up and own that, and that's just from the business side of it. But from the day to day, I'm just going to continue to let it grow.
Yeah.
And we try to refine stuff as we go. How our coaches coach is different now than it was 2 years ago, and some onboarding processes are still getting worked out, and we just kind of go back and forth and say, all right, well, we should do this, and sometimes it happens right away, and other times it takes a year or never
I just
happens.
had a quick question. How much, you don't have to put a dollar or anything on it, but like how much time, I guess, are you spending a month, just generally speaking, on educating maybe yourself and your staff, or personally, and and that doesn't have to be like going to camps. It could just be reading and so on and so forth.
Not enough is probably the easiest answer, because some months it's not much at all.
Fair enough.
And it's usually in an informal method with our coaches, so we don't sit down as a group and discuss stuff. It's just not, we haven't done that, and it's something we probably should do.
I think we're in the same boat there, is why I asked, because we just had a conversation the other day. I was like, dude, we need to start spending more money on just every month, and again, it doesn't mean money, just more time on talking to people like yourself, because again, you have so much knowledge and you're right up the road, or going to camps, and whether it's OPT or whatever, CrossFit, so on and so forth. And I was just curious.
Yeah. So that's the answer, is not enough.
Yeah.
I think everybody,
is it ever enough?
everyone would say that. You could spend.
I'll rephrase it like almost none.
Yeah.
That's
right.
fair.
So, and I'll go through phases where that's like a bigger priority for me, and I'm just not in one of those phases right now.
And your none is still, like you said, you still have enlightened us on like, hey, the comp train, they offer this, and so you're still obviously looking at stuff. It's just maybe, like you said, not as dedicated as you might like it to be.
Sure.
Definitely not.
Yeah. One thing we ask everyone here, which is the very last question before we end, which is a very simple question, but I'm intrigued to hear what you have to say, which is, what is your definition of fitness?
Personally, or for
Sure. Don't screw this up.
there's no pressure. We only ask everyone. I only heard you ask Dupree and then haven't had a good answer in my head. Well, I mean, it depends, right? That's the go-to coaching answer for everything. But it really does depend for fitness. So the first step is, do you have an actual honest goal, right? And what do you want to be doing day to day in your life? Is that the truth? Is what you say you want to be getting out of your time in the gym or outside of the gym, is it truly what you want to be getting out of that time? And then, are you capable of doing that? And if you're capable of doing that, then you're fit. And if you're not, then you're not. So I don't think there's like a blanket, you have to be able to back squat body weight X number of times, right? If you don't care about that stuff, then it's not going to improve, then you're not fitter.
Right.
So for me, it's being able to train 5 days a week and not feel like crap in the morning.
Right. I think that's great.
And so for other people, if you're trying to make it to regionals or advance beyond just the open, then the definition of fitness is completely different for those people, because then it is tied to your performance and what you're capable of doing with your body. And that's totally different than, I just want to be able to squat without pain.
Sure.
Right. So, we have people in here who 60 plus years old, and we have one woman in particular who came in, and it was basically her children brought her in and said, if she falls over, we're not sure if she's going to be able to get up. So like for her, fitness is totally different. She can get up now off the ground, right? And she can carry stuff, and she can push stuff. Yeah, it is a burpee. It's literally a burpee. So that's her fitness. My fitness is a little different. And then your guys' fitness is probably a little different too. And my fitness now is different than what it was 5 years ago when I was like, maybe I have a shot to do something. But Then everybody else came into it, and no, you don't have a shot to do anything. So
Yeah.
It's just I think it changes all the time, but it's just being capable of doing the day-to-day stuff that you actually enjoy doing and matches up with what you say you want to be doing.
Yeah, that's great.
good
I think
stuff.
that's going to be our next T-shirt. It's just going to say "It depends."
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the
Yeah.
definitive answer for
It-
just about
it is.
everything.
Yeah, it is, and that's why like
How should I do this workout?
that depends. What do you want to get out of it? What weight should I use? I don't know. It depends. But man, it makes things easy.
It
Right.
does, because it really opens up a question again of the very simple question of why.
Right.
You know, why are you here? Why are you doing this? Why do you show up every day? And that can change depending on
Yeah,
your goal.
definitely.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you personally for
Yeah.
being on
Yeah,
with
man.
us today.
Thanks so
and,
much.
Thanks for having us up here. And thank you all for listening to Everyday Athlete. Join us next week as we dive deep into the lives of those who make us great. Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Good stuff.